car. I took the exit off Patterson Avenue and steered the curve. Next, all I had to do was merge onto 288 South. I'd made this drive 100 times, but this time would be different. I didn't look in my mirrors. I didn't look in my blind spot. I just merged right into the side of an 18-wheeler semi. My car repelled off the side of the semi. I lost control. Glass cracked, and in moments I found myself hanging upside down in the seat of my car. I unbuckled my seatbelt and I landed on the ceiling. I screamed, crying out for help, and after a moment I quit screaming and attempted to open my door. No success. I went for another door, and that didn't open either. The smell of gas and burning filled the air, and my car flashed and beeped, and not knowing much about cars, I thought it might just explode with me inside. But I opened a third door and stepped out, unharmed. People who had stopped came rushing up the embankment I'd landed on and asked if I was okay and if there was anyone else in the car. "I'm all right," I could say with relief. "No, there's no one else in the car." There were a lot of kind people that comforted me that day. Not even 4 months later, I would find myself in yet another wreck. This time, I was making a left turn at a green light, and another car sped through their red light and T-boned me. Again, I came out unharmed, but with another totaled vehicle. I was shocked at first, but still went to work after and honestly forgot about it the rest of the day. In both of these scenarios, my life was threatened, but there were no consequences other than losing the vehicles. Everything changed during a third accident that occurred in the same year. On July 22nd, 2021, at around 10:30 p.m., my friend Jasmine Williamson left work and started to drive home on Anderson Highway. She never made it home. Jasmine crossed the center line, ran off the road to the left, and struck trees, dying at the scene. I do not tell this story in order to say why she crashed or that she could have spared herself if only she had done something different. And the truth is, no one really knows for sure. This story is a reminder that driving can have consequences that are much closer than you think. No one knows what happened that night, and no one ever will. All I know is that a person who had an impact and an effect on so many lives is now completely gone. Car wrecks are an increasing issue across the U.S. NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, gathered data that revealing in the first 9 months of 2021, the fatality rates for traffic accidents rose far above what they estimated. There was a 12% increase compared to 2020 and a 32% increase in the last 10 years. And that is the death statistic. Car wrecks injure 3 million in the US every year, 2 million of those being permanent injuries. And most of these deaths and injuries are young adults. Internationally, automobile accidents are the #1 cause of death for ages 15 to 29, and the 9th leading cause of death for all ages. There are many different reasons why car accidents can occur. Popular correlations include age, distraction, and emotional state. When considering the statistics, it is important to recognize that these accidents were not intentional, but they have a dramatic effect on people like you and me. Navigating in a motor vehicle is especially an issue for young drivers because their brains have not fully developed. The prefrontal cortex, also known as the PFC, is the front part of the brain and is the decision maker of the brain. It helps with functions like decision-making, focus, forethought, follow-through, judgment, planning, problem-solving, impulse control, all essential qualities of driving. And this part of the brain isn't going to be fully developed until age 25 or 26. Distracted driving is a term heard frequently. And the most common distraction when it comes to driving is a phone. Reaction and control times are even less texting and driving than they are driving intoxicated. When texting, the driver becomes 23 times more likely to crash. A study that was done on dialing and driving hypothesized that peer pressure and peers' attitudes towards phone use while driving will heavily affect whether or not a person uses a phone while driving. If a young driver knows his friend is driving and receives a text from him, he will feel equally comfortable to text that friend when he is driving. And even more than peers, parents affect the way their kids drive. Their kids watch them grow up. Their kids watch them behind the wheel as they grow up. And their parents are the ones who teach them how to drive. So if a young adult sees his mom or dad use a cell phone while driving, he will feel empowered to use it in the same way that they do. Another factor that plays a part in the causation of accidents is one's emotional state. I know someone who went to visit her friend in prison, and this was a very emotional experience for her. Her mind was flooded with the thoughts from her experience on her drive home, so unknowingly, she continued to put more and more pressure on the gas till a police car pulled her over and she received a ticket. When in a strong state of emotion, it is important to assess the situation. Where am I going? Is there someone I can call to tell I'm going to be late? Maybe the driver only needs to acknowledge his feelings, and that will take him more time, it'll take him more focus to drive well, and maybe he just needs to take a few minutes to gather himself before taking off. Or maybe it's better he just isn't in a place where he should drive at all. Uncontrolled emotions can be taken out on the road, leading to reckless driving or road rage, which is why the car must not be used as an emotional outlet. Emotional states that can negatively affect a person's ability to drive include feelings of anxiousness, anger, or pure sensation seeking. Sensation seeking involves pairing the romantic or thrilling experience of driving with actions that may result in physical, social, legal, or financial consequences. Everything is put on the line for the sake of experiencing the adrenaline, the thrill, the feeling, the power. This can lead to a mistaken understanding of what it means to be a good driver, considering some people use this phrase to convey they are good at making risky driving maneuvers on the road, good at going fast, good at making sharp turns, good at multitasking. The average American actually believes himself to be an above-average driver. Though many consider themselves to be good drivers, they do not understand what it is to be a good driver. I had an interview with Eric Cohen, a driving school instructor in Goochland County, and I asked him, what is a good driver? His answer, in short, was self-awareness, respect for other drivers, and getting rid of all distractions. The good driver is 100% honest with his strengths and weaknesses. He knows what he struggles with and what he needs to improve on. He is humble in this way and does not settle for just enough. The good driver respects others on the road and is not disconnected from the other people in their cars. He is ready to be patient with others and put others before himself. And the good driver drives undistracted because he knows what he is doing requires his total attention. A good driver is an intentional driver because his strategy is an intentional one. He knows what his priorities are and his practices follow them. The intentional driver uses a strategy that is perceptive. A perceptive driver is someone who fully understands as a human being he has limitations. He understands human beings are not meant to go fast. He understands his power behind the wheel and therefore what is required of him. He masters driving in 3 groups of skills: physical, sensory, and cognitive. People quite obviously need to use their physical skills when driving for wheel, brakes, turning to check blind spots and mirrors. And sensory, you need to use sight for scanning and searching the road. Hearing and smell are helpful, but I won't make those too important. I know some of you may have lost your smell in the last 2 years. And cognitive skills are especially important because they apply to reaction time and decision making. All these skills work together to make a perceptive driver. Drivers forget in the comfortable little worlds of their cars they are moving faster than the human mind was made to process surroundings, which includes countless potential hazards and other gas-powered metal enclosures moving 55 miles an hour. Driving is more than just about being safe or not getting a ticket or just following the rules of the road. Driving comes with the duty of protecting oneself and the lives of those around him by driving with intention, giving the task one's full attention, and practicing strong driving habits. Do drivers need to reevaluate the way they govern themselves and operate their motor vehicles? Yes, drivers must refocus their priorities for their own sake and for the sake of others, creating intentional practices that will in time become good habits. So if a driver's priorities need to be refocused, this is what they should be. The first priority of an intentional driver should be to take ownership, to protect people's life, health, and property. Driving can be a situation that causes people to disconnect from the other cars outside their vehicle. People can get in their little worlds, jamming to their favorite songs and thinking about what the rest of the day looks like. And if there are no passengers, the driver feels that he is having some time alone. But the truth is that while he might have time alone, there is someone else driving 20 feet to his left. People care more about what is happening inside their vehicle and forget what is happening around and outside them. The driver must remember that cars driving have people in them. This means that he has a responsibility to protect those around him by developing habits such as maintaining distance from the car in front of him, checking blind spots consistently, and driving undistracted. When habits of respect are not formed, a driver will be prone to accidents, from little fender benders to fatal crashes. I once scratched a woman's car when I was trying to park because I thought maybe there was enough space between my car and hers, and honestly, I was wishing my luck and didn't think much about it. But I had to pay $650 for this little scratch. If I had been less focused on getting my car parked and getting inside, and instead adopted patience and concern for another person's property, then I would have been more careful and the damage could have been spared or prevented. Maybe a scratch is not a huge deal, but if prudence is given in the smallest scenarios, then it will certainly be given in the big ones. The second priority of an intentional driver should be the awareness of one's position behind the wheel. When a driver sits behind the wheel, he is like Iron Man. He still feels like the little human that he is, but this human is capable of moving 80 miles an hour and is built of steel. These enclosures of steel, rubber, plastic, and glass become personal little worlds. When people are in their little worlds and are provided with features that keep them comfortable, it feels too easy, and driving becomes credited as downtime. The car can feel personal and comfortable, but this steel gas-powered chariot becomes mistaken for a sanctuary. The car can be a fine place to clear the mind and listen to music. I know that I have long days where I find no time to myself besides for when I drive. However, when the driver views his time driving as downtime, he is thinking of all the things that he can get done in this time. He may eat breakfast, respond to texts, record a video to send to someone, or have a meltdown. However, when you understand the power that you have behind the wheel, you must also understand the responsibility of giving it full attention. The self-aware driver knows what works best for himself. He knows what is most distracting or limits him from focusing, what helps him focus and how much he needs to focus at this point based off of his driving abilities. The capacity to have conversations with passengers, listen to music or podcasts, or similar activities can vary based on the driver's personal ability. However, any activity in which the driver is physically distracted is indisputably a bad activity, because driving is a physical activity. And looking at a phone will not only disconnect the driver physically, but also sensory and cognitively. Because you're holding your phone, your eyes are on your phone, your mind is on your phone. Strong habits and practices make a driver automatic in good driving and able to allow room for non-physical activity, such as conversation or listening to music. But being physically unavailable is a destructive habit. For young drivers especially, driving takes more focus. Therefore, they must require themselves to use more energy on focusing. Having awareness of power behind the wheel includes considering more than just the rules of the road. It is tempting to focus on who is in the right or who is in the wrong while driving, but this will not prevent every accident. My second accident was not my fault. I was turning the green light. It was the other guy who ran the red light. But what if I could have prevented this? What if I noticed his car was coming and was able to slow down? I did not do anything wrong on my side of the story, but what if I could have done more? What if my eyes had been trained to notice more on the road? People can prioritize more than just following the rules and receiving a gold star for being in the right. The goal should not be to place blame, but to reach a desired outcome where all persons and property are unharmed. Drivers have a responsibility to take ownership of their powerful position behind the wheel and to do more than the bare minimum. All too often, a student driver takes driver's ed, receives a license, tries to remember and follow the rules, and is done learning. I merged on a highway without looking. I needed to go back to driving school. I decided to tune out while driving, and when I was not nearly finished learning how to drive, I should have been aware that I had only had a license for a little over a year, and it still takes me more focus and energy while driving. Learning how to drive continues after driving with only a parent. Learning how to drive continues after driver's ed. The third priority of the intentional driver is to reduce distractions and hazards. The greatest distraction in the car is the use of a phone. This is the most common reason for accidents and the hardest one to solve. It is prohibited for any driver to even hold a cell phone in Virginia. But no authority is able to track when a person picks up his phone while driving. A study done on dialing and driving conducted an experiment in which they concluded, in quotation, strategies to reduce mobile phone use while driving should focus on changing people's attitudes to become less supportive of using a phone while driving and highlight that the significant others in our lives would not approve of compromising safety to enable communication, end quote. By setting an example And by disapproving of the practice of mobile phone use while driving, one can decrease the chances of the people around them doing the same. When a person is considering using his cellular device while driving, he should consider the people in his life whom he cares about. If he does not want them to put their lives at risk using a phone while driving, then he must choose not to either. He understands his own value and the knowledge that the people in the vehicles around him are at risk when he uses his phone. When a driver keeps these priorities in mind, a number of practices can result. I will highlight 3 which I believe are most important. Deciding how to treat calls and texts, giving space, and saying a prayer. First, the self-aware driver decides beforehand where he puts his phone and how he plans to treat calls and texts. I know it is a danger for me just to see my phone, because when I see it, I'm inclined to pick it up. So I put it in the compartment between both my seats. So pick a spot in the car for the phone to be every time you drive. And if you're someone who has a car without an installed GPS, then I would highly recommend installing one so you don't have to hold your phone when trying to get somewhere. Second, the driver who respects others on the road always gives space between vehicles. Giving space always gives the driver, as well as those around him, more decision-making time. Just better all around. Third, while the intentional driver takes personal responsibility, he also knows that his fate, ultimately, is in God's hands. And so he prays. People pray before they eat. People pray in times of distress. So why not pray before embarking on these intersecting asphalt rivers of rushing steel machines that we call roads? Pray not only for a blessed trip, pray that you will drive in the proper mindset. Ask for patience, wisdom, and self-control. Choose the kind of driver you want to be, and ask God to help you achieve your goal. After listening to everything said thus far, it may seem easily agreeable. But if it were truly agreeable to everyone, then it would not be the current issue that it is. Everyone agrees, but habits don't change. When I'm driving, I can feel like it doesn't really matter that much. If I look at my phone in the moment, I'll be fine most of the time. None of it feels as prevalent in those simple moments of driving. A distracted driver with bad habits can get away without a single accident, and the person really trying to implement habits can experience the worst experiences and accidents. People can get away with bad habits, so why should they change the way they drive? Just because they have not experienced consequences does not mean they never will. Do not wait for the bad things to happen to change your habits. Even if people believe their small, poor choices are not putting anyone in harm's way, they are influencing some of the most important people in their lives. Their kids are watching how they drive. Their peers are watching how they drive. Just because they have been okay making the choices they have made does not mean that their friends will. Most of the time, it will not feel prevalent, but remember the reality, and that the habits created when it's easy will make a difference when it's harder. Ever since Jasmine's death, my friends and I always send each other off with the words, "Drive safe." Knowing what we mutually have gone through, I know what these words mean. They mean, I love you, and I don't want to lose you too. I do not want to receive a text from them when they are driving. I do not want them to rush through the roads to get anywhere. I want them to look out for themselves while they drive, and by looking out for themselves, also looking out for others around them. When you sit down in your 4,000-pound motor vehicle in your power, You must make the choice to live intentionally with established habits and focused priorities for your own sake and for the sake of others. Thank you.